Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the World at War Comics podcast. My next special guest is Mr. Ryan Claytor. Ryan, thank you so much for being with me. Award-winning writer, artist, all those kind of things. Professor, like what am I missing, Ryan? You kind of do a lot of things, my friend. Yeah. So good to
Yeah,
have you, though, man. It's such a pleasure.
Tommy, thank you so much for giving me the time. It's great to be here. You've done a lot of interviews. It's very impressive. So I'm glad to finally be among them. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
No, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Kind of going through your background and looking at all the amazing things that you've accomplished leading up to this title that we're going to talk about today. What a career so far. But look at that. Look at that. One bite at a time. Ryan Claytor, 20 years of this amazing experience and writings and drawings all in one book. Man, it must feel amazing to be at this point where now it's here.
I I can't even tell you. This has been such a journey. I mean, I've been working on this book for 5 years, 20 if you count all the work that's inside it. But this is my big, oversized hardcover art book featuring 20 years of my work in comics, illustration, and design. I've designed things like neon signs and watches and all kinds of different stuff, and it's all in there. And I'm really excited not only about the content, because it's not just pretty picture after pretty picture, but each artwork is paired with a page of process art. So, really pulling back the curtain and showing behind the scenes of what it took to make each and every artwork that's in there. And I'm also really excited about it because of the formatting of the book. There's just over the top specialty formatting, from gatefold pages to vellum overlays to die cut reveals, textured pages, embossed, and all of it goes to bolster this theme of process. Like the vellum overlay I was just mentioning, it simulates a page of tracing paper that I was using when I was originally making the page. So it overlays the original artwork just like it did in real life. So I'm making these things as close to authentic as I possibly can in the form of a book. We've got gatefold pages that fold out to form these like 1.5 by 2 foot pages to show you this was the size of the original artwork I was working on. So again, all of it goes to bolster this theme of process, and I'm just ecstatic this is in my hands and so humbled that I was able to bring it to fruition because of a crowd that was willing to show up to Kickstarter for me. After doing this for a number of years, 20 years, you may have heard, a lot of people showed up, and I could not have made this book without them. I'm just so incredibly thankful. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Oh, absolutely. And congratulations on a successful Kickstarter. And nothing, I think, is more fulfilling than knowing others enjoy your creation. And you had quite a few people back that. So congratulations. And now they're getting it in their hands. And I can't
Yep.
wait for the reactions of all these folks popping that thing open, because you're going to have to go like this to turn pages. And that's a pretty good size book.
Yeah, it's not small. It's
I love it.
oversized book, 9 by 12,
Love it.
260 pages.
Wow.
Just a ton of work in here. I'm Yeah, so happy it's finally in people's hands. The Kickstarter is now fulfilled, and I'm now on a tour promoting the book. Now that it's in our hands, it's reality. It's not just a concept anymore. For so long it's been a mock-up image and I've been talking about it, but now it's actually here. So thanks for letting me come on and talk about it. And if anybody's watching, they're interested in more information about it, you can go to onebiteatatimebook.com. That's onebiteatatimebook.com. It'll take you straight to that page on my website, and you can see some more images of it.
Nice, beautiful. Well, we certainly want to bring up that page because we want people to find it very easily. And if you missed out on the Kickstarter, you could still order it, which is awesome. But I would love for fans just to get to know you a little bit better, Ryan. This passion for art, this passion for storytelling, can you kind of walk us through when that took place in your life? Was that at a very early age? And then also, were there one or two people that were a big part of the influence of you going in this direction, whether a school teacher, family member? Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. So I was a really reluctant reader growing up. My parents had a tough time encouraging me to read, and I do it a little bit, but it wasn't my thing until I found comics. And when I was younger, maybe 6, 7 or so, I was reading a lot of the Disney comics, mostly gravitating toward the Duck books like Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck.
Right.
Um, and then as I aged up a little bit, I started appreciating satire a little more and started getting into the work of Sergio Aragonés. He does Gru the Wanderer. That was a huge book for me when I was young, and I still pick up every issue today. I love Sergio's work. So I was introduced to Gru the Wanderer by uh, one of my brother's friends. You know, when we were young, my older brother would have a friend spend the night, and he would sleep in real late, and his buddy would get up pretty early. And when my brother wasn't around, it was okay to interact with me. So we had like, friendly times
Yep.
until my brother woke up. And then, I was the little brother and I wasn't cool to be around anymore. But during those early morning hours when we were both awake, he's like, "Hey, have you read this? Are you interested in it?" And what showed me Sergio's work. And I was just head over heels. I love getting into all the little intricate details that he includes in there. And I don't know if you're familiar with the work or not, but
Yeah.
every issue has a hidden message in it. Were you aware of this?
No, no, I didn't. Like I've been picking up the latest ones that have been coming out, and I absolutely love it. It's hilarious. But tell me about those hidden messages.
So back when it was being published monthly through Epic Comics, the imprint of Marvel, and also I believe it was also in the earlier issues from Pacific and Eclipse, but definitely the Epic issues. You could look in the issue somewhere and find a hidden message that said the hidden message. And it was somewhere, it would be in grass blades or, intricate details, or sometimes they'd Mark Evanier, the writer, would lay out the letters column. So like the first letter of each line spelled out the hidden message, or just all kinds of wacky stuff like that. So there was just such an attention to detail that my little 8, 9 year old self was just so enamored with and just poured over for hours and hours. So if there was an inciting incident, that was probably it, being introduced to Gru the Wanderer from my brother's friend. But, over the years, I've talked with just, countless people who have made comics from before I was even making comics, folks who gave me the time of day that, you know, I was just some punk kid and, interested in comics. But like Tom Luth, the colorist for Sergio Aragonés, I remember offering to take him out to lunch, and we would have, big conversations about how do you do this? What button do you press? And before there was the internet boom of information, the university boom of comics education, uh, I was literally going around from person to person and asking questions. John Rochelle of Comic Craft lived in Santa Barbara, California, near where I grew up. So I remember contacting him, taking him out to lunch, asking him a bunch of questions, and learning as much as I could anywhere I could.
That's awesome, man. Incredible. And when did you start actually writing out your own stories? Was that at a young age too, just kind of playing around, drawing a little bit?
Not really. I drew a lot as a kid. I was a big drawer, an artist, and it really wasn't until after college that I started writing my own comics. It was my senior year so I was into comics big when I was little. High school hit, and I sort of forgot about comics for about a decade. And then my senior year of college, a buddy of mine asked me, I was lucky enough to have a car in my senior year of college. And he said, "Hey, will you take me to the comic book store?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I used to do that." So I went with him and was just sort of puttering around while he was getting his stuff. And I picked up a book by my old favorite cartoonist, Sergio Aragonés, and it was this compilation called Boogeyman. He put out a mini series, a little bit before that. I'm like, I used to love Sergio stuff. Let's see what he's doing. And I was just head over heels at that point. It was all over. It was comics, comics, comics from then on out. And I was just finishing up with my undergrad in art studio, and I thought, okay, well, why am I not making comics? I'm making all this other kind of art. So I started learning more about comics, making my own comics. And the first comics I produced were some autobiographical comics. I was reading a lot at that time and really gravitated toward true to life, historical fiction, autobiographical type of work. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try my hand at that. So I started doing these autobio comic strips, and those were the first several issues of comics that I produced. I still kind of gravitate and focus on mostly nonfiction work. Like one of my most recent books that I co-wrote with a great buddy of mine, Nick Baldridge, is called Coin Op Carnival, and that's all about electromechanical coin-operated amusement devices. So, in layman's terms, old pinball and arcade games. And so we interviewed the most prolific pinball designer of all time. His
Oh,
name is
wow.
Wayne Nyans. Just such an incredible person. I feel so lucky to have become friendly with Wayne. Um, we also did some game reviews in there, had tech segments, product spotlights, papercraft models, letters columns, just jam-packed that issue with 64 pages of illustrations and prose and everything else. So anyway, that's a long-winded way to say I'm still interested in nonfiction work.
Yeah. No, that's awesome because I had wrote down about the pinball and I wanted to ask you, are you or were you as passionate about pinball machines and that type of gaming as the two folks that you work with that title on?
Yeah,
Did you
so
become a fan working on that title?
so growing up, I had my dad owned a couple of pinball machines. So they were in our basement, and it was just kind of part of my life. It did not seem strange to have a pinball machine in my basement. And again, I sort of forgot about pinball for a very long time, a couple decades, until I moved to Michigan from California. And I was in a new state, a new place, trying to find my way around. I happened past this arcade in town called Pinball Pete's. It's still here.
Oh, wow.
And they had some pinball machines. I'm like, wow, I remember this. And really started visiting Pinball Pete's and getting reacquainted, and then really diving down that rabbit hole of the pinball hobby, which is just so rich. I mean, you can enjoy pinball from any number of angles, from the history of pinball to the gameplay to competition to the artwork, from the mechanics to the electron. There's just it's such a deep and rich hobby. So I really went head over heels into it in a big way. And I met one of my very best friends through the pinball hobby. His name is Nick Baldridge. And to make a long story short, together we co-wrote Coin Op Carnival. We both had a big love of pinball already.
Yeah.
And I illustrated the entire issue. I'm still so proud of how that turned out. Every once in a while, we'll look back on it like, wow, we did that. That turned out all right.
Was there several issues of that?
There will be several issues of
Oh,
it. So we've produced issue number one. It's going to be a 4 issue limited series. We were working on issue number two, and that got derailed a little bit. So the first issue, we interviewed Wayne Nyans, and as I mentioned, most prolific pinball designer in all time. And he was just such a joy to work with. We we kind of hit a wall with issue number two, where there were um, some creative differences to the point where I had illustrated a great number of pages, and to make a long story short, they became unpublishable. So I kind of had the creative wind knocked out of my sails a little bit. And I told Nick, I'm like, you know what? I think I need to shift gears a little bit for a minute. And I swear we'll come back to Coin Op Carnival, but I just need to like get my creative mojo back. And then so I did A Hunter's Tale, which is a poem about empathy that my grandfather wrote
yeah,
over 40 years ago at this point,
yeah.
and I adapted that to comic book form. And then I had this 20th anniversary thing coming up, and I'm like, Nick, I got to make this happen. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And he's like, do it. It's okay. I know you'll come back. So the next projects I'm working on after this are going to be with Nick. We're working on an electromechanical scratch build arcade game. And
Wow.
then it's going to be Coin Op Carnival #2 after that, where we, get ourselves moving again and get that next issue out.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about some of your other titles because you have Owen and Daddy. You also
Yeah.
have Better Together. So
Mhm.
there's this theme when you mention your grandfather, your wife, I assume your son, being able to take family and then write stories and illustrate that. Can you talk about how important that is for you?
Yeah, yeah. Family is indescribably important to me. I had, really fantastic parents growing up. I love my mom and dad so much, and they just set such a great example for me of what it means to be great people, have a great relationship. And then when my wife and I got married, we were thinking, what could we do that's a little out of the ordinary for a gift for our guests who come and support us. And candied almonds, etched wine flutes, they all seem very impersonal. And we're like, what if we write a comic book? And so this is an 8-page full color comic book. It was my first full color comic. I'd not worked in color before that. Um, and we came up with these vignettes together and I illustrated it. And after our wedding, I had people, readers that were not at my wedding, find out about it. And they're like, how can we get an issue? And so I went to my wife and I'm like, this is a little weird, but do you want to sell this thing? She was like, yeah, if you can sell it, let's make it happen. So now that's available for purchase if people are interested.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you mentioned Owen and Daddy. So I became a daddy in 2013, and I started doing these illustrations with my son where we'd wake up every morning before preschool. He was about 4 years old at this point, and he was learning how to write letter forms and draw. And we'd do this collaborative exercise together where he would draw something on a piece of paper. And while he was doing that, I would sort of make dotted line letter forms and illustrations of whatever he was into, a race car, a rocket ship, a train, whatever. And so then when he was done with his drawing, he'd give it to me. And likewise, I'd give that to him. And then he'd work on his letter forms, tracing out the letters, tracing out a rocket ship or what have you. And then I would take his drawing and he'd tell me what it was. Like, this is, you know, he came up with all sorts of trains, automobiles, whatever it was,
Yeah.
or elephant eating ice cream. And I would embellish whatever he had on there, and he would draw in one color pen. I would draw in a different color pen. So when you look at it, it's a single image, but you can kind of pick apart which part was done by which person because of the color. Um, and that was something that we just did for fun. And on a whim, I posted it on social media and it became kind of a tradition. People were like, "Oh, where's the next one?" And after he lost interest, people were like, "Where's the book?" Like, there's not a book. You want a book? Okay, I'll look into that. And so now there's a book that compile all of those collaborative drawings that we did together. Yeah.
That's something that will last forever. That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Thanks.
One day Owen will look back on that and that'll think will bring a lot of amazing memories if it's not already doing that, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was a ton of fun. And he's gone on to illustrate his own comic books. And
Nice.
so occasionally he'll come with me to conventions. He's going to be with me at Comic-Con this year for one
Wow.
day. So he'll have some of his work there, be selling it with me. And yeah, he does really well at conventions. He's great talking to people, and
That's awesome.
uh yeah, we have a lot of fun together.
That's very cool. Can we kind of switch a little bit? I would love to talk about the program that you're leading at MSU around comic book, creating art, writing. Can you kind of walk how you got into that and then where it's at today compared to where it was at when you started? Because I assume it's gotten a lot more bigger than it was a few years ago, right?
That's very true. It was non-existent when I started. At least the educational programming was non-existent. So rewinding back to 2008, 2009, when my then girlfriend, now wife, and I moved from California to Michigan, and she got a full-time position at Michigan State University and got me a bit of a partner hire while she was at it. They gave me one class, and I said, okay, this comics class is the one that I'd like to teach. And they said, okay, you do that. It over enrolled. It's been offered ever since. And now at this point in time, we have a comic art and graphic novel minor course of study that is an interdisciplinary minor between the art and English departments at Michigan State University. In addition to this minor and multiple classes, we also have a ton of comics resources. The largest of which is our special collections library, which houses the largest public collection of comic books
Wow.
in the world, anywhere ever. It sits in
Wow.
our main library at Michigan State University. And that is the work of uh, a, essentially a single person. His name is Randy Scott, and he worked his entire lifetime on that, just retired recently. And for 50 years, he was amassing this collection to the point where we've got over 350,000 comics in our collection. And I tell you, it was so rare that I'd ever find a hole in our collection. But once in a while I did. And I'm like, hey, am I just missing this? I'm looking for this particular book. Do we have it? And he said, nope, but we do now. It'll be here in a week. And, he'd order it and bring it in. It was just incredible. So we have this giant collection of anything and everything you could possibly think of: American comics, American alternative comics, mainstream comics, European comics, manga, bande dessinée. We even have comics from North Korea. How
Oh,
we got comics from North Korea, I'm still a little unclear about,
maybe you
but
didn't
but
want
we've
to know
got
how
them.
you get those. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and we've even got periodicals about comics, the Comics Journal. We've got how to make comic books. Just everything you can possibly think of is there. It's an unparalleled collection. So I mention all this to say, a lot of the times when I'm proposing new things at Michigan State University, I want to do a minor. I want to have an annual event. I think we should have more faculty. I'll point to that often and say, hey, look, we have this world-class collection here. We should be using this. So that's really helped me a lot in building out the academic curriculum of comics at Michigan State University. And it's not just me. We have multiple professors who teach comics classes now.
Incredible. I seen some
Yeah.
pictures on your website of a comic store that I believe is very close or within the same city, and then a bookstore where you do a lot of signings with your students after their creation is done, right?
That's right. So every comics studio class I teach, whether it's introductory or advanced, culminates in a professional development activity of some sort. Typically, it's selling their books at a local store. So in the introductory class, we'll do several short comic stories over the course of the semester. Then they take those stories and compile them into their own individual books. This is not a class-wide anthology. This is like everybody has their own book.
I love it.
So they take those books to a local shop where they sign and sell what they worked on over the course of the semester. And you're right, there are a couple stores right now. So we have one called Summit Comics, and literally two doors down on the same block is this wonderful independent bookstore called A Novel Concept. And just this past semester, I'm sorry, this past fall, we had an introductory comic signing at Summit concurrently with a signing for my advanced comic students at A Novel Concept. And so there was like cross pollination. You could go around the block and see comics every stop you were at. It was really cool. That was the first time we did that simultaneously at two stores. So that was really fun.
That sounds absolutely amazing. Now,
Yeah.
when you were putting the course together, did you reach out to other universities, or did you already kind of have a plan of how you wanted to lay that out? Because I would think that'd be a little daunting to walk into Michigan State and then all of a sudden you're building a course, and the course is like, where did you get inspiration on how that course should be taught and how you executed it?
Yeah. So before I moved to Michigan, I was teaching at a number of different colleges in Southern California. I was teaching at San Diego State University, a couple community colleges around the area, and I was big into comics and also teaching. And so I was speaking with one of the institutions I was teaching at, saying, "Hey, I'd really love to teach a comics class." And they were supportive of it to the point where we went through all the steps that it took to make it an official class. It was on the books, and I was ready to teach it the following semester. And then we moved to Michigan. So at that point, I had all the paperwork I needed. And when we moved to Michigan and they said, well, you and your wife, or we were not married at the time, that you and your girlfriend are not married, so we can't really give you a partner hire, but we'll give you one class for one semester, and that's it. So when they said that, I'm like, here is the one class that I want to teach. I can teach all this other, web design, graphic design, Photoshop, Illustrator, all that stuff. I was teaching a bunch of graphic design programs before, but the one I really wanted to teach was comics. So if you're going to give me a single class, I'm going to tell you the one class I want to teach. So that's how it kind of started. I had developed the curriculum already, and it was really just sort of piecemealed from a lot of information that I'd gleaned over the years from talking with people, from reading articles, from making my own comics, and trying to distill it into a really honed approach of making comics. Like I said, every single one of my classes culminates in this professional development activity. And in order to do that, everyone has to have their own book at the end of it. So there's no messing around. Like we've got to be working the whole semester in order to have a completed book in 3 months. So, and I'm not their only class, so they're also taking other classes too. So it's really a tall ask for them to do that. But they make it happen. I'm really proud of my students, and I think that they really get a lot out of that culminating activity where they sell their books. Is what class do you have in college where you make a little bit of money from it instead of losing money from it? I want them to see that their art has value and we're not just doing this for busy work.
Yeah, that is, I think, so inspirational. And as a creator, going through that course and then having something physical in your hands where you could kind of see the results of that labor and then to share it with others too, and make a few bucks at the same time, as any college student would want to do. I
Right.
think that's pretty amazing, Ryan. That's awesome, man. It sounds like an amazing course. How many years have you been teaching it now up to this point?
Let's see, started in 2009. So what are we at? 2024, 15 years? 15 years.
Years.
Oh my God. 15 years now.
Incredible, huh? The longevity of that course and the popularity obviously has grown because it's built into other courses that kind of tie in a minor, right?
Right, that's right. So the minor is 5 different courses. It's the introductory course, the capstone advanced course. Those are studio courses. So making comics. And then there's also an English course in comics. So comics literature. There's also a drawing course. And then the fifth course is you can choose from a pool of courses. So basically, we do that so the student can tailor the minor to a more art focused or a more English focused experience for their minor. Like I said, it's this interdisciplinary minor between art and English. So we have the ability to kind of allow the students to choose their path in a way. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of allowing students to do what they want to do.
That is so cool, man. It sounds absolutely amazing. Wish I wasn't 50 years old. It sounds like a course I would like to take, to be honest.
There's some benefits of getting up here too.
Yeah, yeah.
I think back to
Exactly.
when I was 20 and, sure it has its advantages, but I I feel a whole lot different now and in some ways better, in
Yep.
some ways a little more painful, but in some ways better.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's get to this amazing 20-year culmination of all that work in this amazing title that you have. What I would like to do,
Uh,
if I could,
yeah.
yeah, one bite at a time. That's just absolutely, I mean, the cover is incredible, and I think the colors that you chose on that is pretty awesome.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. I'm so excited
beautiful.
about how this turned out. This is a dual cloth bound cover. So this is like brown and teal cloth. I was able to get a couple different foil stamps on the front spine and also the back cover too. If I can move this belly band a little bit. There's a 20th anniversary logo back there. So and like I mentioned, inside there's just a ton of different formatting to bolster that theme of process. I won't bore you with it again already, but
Oh, no.
so proud of how this book turned out. It's just such a high to finally have it in my hands after working on it for many, many years.
And I would think because of all those added items in your book from a printing standpoint, right? It probably took a little bit longer as well. You got the fold out, you got all this other stuff. It's probably not super simple to get a printer to go, yeah, we'll do that for you.
You are so incredibly right. So usually when I'll solicit quotes for getting a book printed, it's like a handful, three, four, six printers, and then you kind of know the lay of the land and you go with the one that you want. I solicited quotes from over 2 dozen printers when I was quoting this book, and most of them would not even touch it because I had so many requests for this book. But the printer that I went with, I just cannot sing their praises highly enough. They're mentioned on my Kickstarter campaign. It's called Rich Color Printing. And I swear, every couple months or so, I'd come to them and say, hey, I have another zany idea. Can we make vertical gatefold pages? Can we include a vellum overlay? Can we cut holes in a page? Can we, and every single time I came to them and asked them this, they'd never told me no. They always said, yes, we can do it, and this is how much it will cost, and allowed me to make the decision about whether or not that was worth it for me. And pretty much everything was worth it for me. I basically made the book of my dreams, and I could not have done it without Rich Color Printing. They were just so incredibly patient. For probably more than a year, I was working with them, getting these files together, getting them ready, leading up to the Kickstarter campaign, and then even after, having them print these. Occasionally, minor things would go awry, like the belly band that you saw on the back of the book ended up being a little short. They're like, hey, just want you to know about this. And together we came to the conclusion, look, we got to redo this thing. We got to make it right. And so every step of the way, they were looking out for me. English is not even their first language. And my print rep even found mistakes that I missed reading through it multiple times over. Like there was an instance in the table of contents where it was inconsistent with a listing down the way in the book. And she's like, hey, is this thing on page number 3 supposed to be the same thing on page 168? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never even saw that. And they are not paid to do that. That is not their job. And so they were not just like, yeah, we'll spit this thing out. Like they were going through this with a fine-tooth comb, just as if not, not better than I was. So yeah, again, you're so right in saying it really takes a very special printer to say, yes, we'll take on a job that's this complex. So many others would not even touch it with a 10-foot pole, or it was like 5x the price to even, you know, talk about doing it.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Now,
Yeah.
a book that is the culmination of this 20-year career, and it kind of walks through step by step how you carry out all these different things that you would carry out as a creator. Is the idea that this will become like a text for MSU for the courses? Because it seems like that would be like a marriage made in heaven, right? To have a book that kind of highlights all these processes that all these students are probably going to have to go through, at least some of them. Is that kind of the idea long term?
So I have a really rough time assigning my own work in classes. I
Yeah,
feel like that's sort of a conflict of interest, and I
maybe so.
just I just never do it. I think it's very strange
Yeah.
um, to force my own students to buy my work. So the short answer is no, it's not going to become a required text, but it is sort of an extension of Ryan Claytor, the educator,
Yeah.
and it will be accessible. It will be around. They can, access it in a library. They can purchase a copy if they want to, but it's certainly not something that they're going to be required to buy in order to take my class. I've got different required readers I have them get that are not written by me.
Yeah.
So the short answer is no, but the long answer is it'll be there if they want to look through it.
And I'm sure it would be help for them as they're going through the courses as well to have like real life examples of what things look like as you're going through that process. So although you're not going to force them to do that, it's probably in their best interest to at least take a look at that because they're probably going to get a lot of help from it.
Yeah, yeah. So I hope they'll take a look through it. I can't force them to, but
Yeah.
it's got a lot of material in there. Some of it is directly comics related, and
Mhm.
you can really sort of peel back that layer that you don't usually see and see, oh, okay, this is where it starts. And wow, does it ever look junky when you're just trying to figure out what's going on a page. But then there's this progressive honing process as you move along, and then, oh, okay, it looks reasonable at the end. So that's how you move through this. But it's not just comics. So like, how do you design a neon sign? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing that was possible in life until a few years ago. And then I started sort of getting this snowball effect once I designed a first one or two of them. And then people are coming to me saying, hey, we want you to do that for me. And I can't even believe I get to say, I am a neon sign designer. Like it's just it still sounds crazy to me, but I
A
know
little
if
random within all your experience for sure, right? It kind of it kind of fits, but it kind of is like that's kind of a strange thing to add to this repertoire of creation, but it's art. It's definitely art.
yeah, I mean, I guess in my mind, all these things sort of relate to one another, like making comics, making neon signs, designing watches, making I make fancy pancakes for my son on Saturdays, and that's featured in the book too. Like all of this stuff I see as this like custom puzzle piecing. Like
Yeah.
I'm not real interested in making puzzles that already exist, like getting a box, dumping out the piece. Just it feels a little sloggy to me. Like, why am I doing this? Somebody's already done this. Why am I doing it again? But if it's a puzzle that's never been accomplished or attempted before, like that makes me really interested. Like, how am I going to fit these panels on a page? How am I going to fit these characters and environments within the panel? How am I going to structure the story so that it fits within this page count? How am I going to allow neon tubes to cross over one another without lighting the one behind it? And like, there's all these different types of constraints for each different medium, and learning those constraints and working within them really excites me.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that neon is like it's a not too distant brother or sister from pinball. I feel like they pretty much go
Good
hand in
point.
hand.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask because in my over your right shoulder, my left, I see a neon sign hanging. Is that a part of your work?
That is one that I ordered and did not design.
Okay,
I
I
just
wasn't sure.
really loved that sugar skull neon, so
Yeah,
I nabbed it. But I do have another one over here that you can't see. I'm pointing to, but it's in the book. Here, I'll show you.
excellent.
It's one I designed for my 20th anniversary
Oh,
of
cool.
making comics, and it looks like this.
Oh, that is so cool.
So that's hanging just to my right, out
That's
of
awesome.
screen, but you can see it in the book, even though
Even
you can't see
have
it on
your
camera.
even have your emblem on there for your I guess would you call it your publishing brand?
Yeah, yeah. So I've been self-publishing my work under the moniker Elephant Eater Comics for 20 years now. And that's my self-publishing company. I publish my books through there, and I know it's kind of a funny name, but it's a saying that my dad used to tell my siblings and I growing up all the time. He'd say, well, if you have a big project, you just do it one bite at a time, and before you know it, you're done. And so that's served the Claytors well over the course of many generations. And, it kind of keeps me grounded as I'm working on these larger projects and pays tribute to my dad too.
I love it. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if it's okay with you, Ryan, I would love to bring up the Kickstarter, because that's one way that people could get their hands on your title. So bear with me as I pull this up real quick.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
We go. So one bite at a time, celebrating this 20 years of amazing history of creating, writing, designing, all those different things. And we saw a live view of this book. It's absolutely gorgeous. It is oversized. You said 9 by 12, if I'm not mistaken,
That's right. Yep.
which is very hefty. And with all those different add-ons that you worked with the printer in adding, I just think this is going to be a surprise to a lot of people as they're going page to page to see the kind of detail that you put into this book to really help visually share and explain all these different processes, which I think is awesome. That's
Uh,
just, I think that's really cool.
Thank you so much, Tommy. That means the world to me. Thank you.
So 250 pages. You could order it here. So I will share this link below, Ryan, to make it very easy for people to get their hands on so they could go right away and order this. Sorry, anytime I do this, my computer does a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Why? I never downloaded anything, but it just happened. But yeah, we'll make sure we make this very easy. So if you missed out on the successful Kickstarter, no worries. There's still opportunity to get this in your hands, right?
Yes, that's right. So if you head to the Kickstarter, which we're looking at right now, that order here button will take you to my personal website where you can order the book. You can also go to the URL onebiteatatime.book.com. That's onebiteatatimebook.com, and it'll take you straight to that page on my website as well. Either way, that's easiest for you. It'll get you to the same place. But if you're on the Kickstarter page and you scroll down a little bit, you can see some preview images of not only the book, but the interiors as well. Um, so let's see what we got here. Yeah, to zoom it in, front and back. Very good. And here you can start to see what the book looks like on the inside. So on the right-hand page, you'll see a big full color image of whatever the piece happens to be. In this case, it was the book I mentioned before called A Hunter's Tale. That was that poem about empathy that my grandfather wrote over 40 years ago. And I converted that to comics form. And on the left-hand side, you see just a little bit of didactic explanation talking about what the project is, when it was made, why it was made, who it was made for, because that's the kind of stuff that when I'm looking through art books, I see a piece and I think, oh, that's really interesting. What's this about? And so seldom is there ever anything saying that type of stuff. Like, I want to know, was this a personal project? Was this client work? Was this made recently? Was this made long ago? What was it made for? What's the impetus behind this? So I tried to give just a brief explanation, and then you'll see those uh, uh, process pieces beneath it. So I had 6 different pencils for what I might do on the cover, and I chose one of them and took it to final pencils. Then you see the inks, and then the final book on the right-hand side. But this was actually a book where, in a very rare occasion, I don't often do this. I took 2 covers to full and final colors, because this was a very personal project for me and my family. I presented them both to my dad. You know, this is my dad's dad who wrote this poem. And I said, hey, what do you think? I want to do this justice. I want to make sure this is right. What do you think we should do here? And, together as a family, we all chose the cover that we thought was best and move forward with that. So that's why you see that second full color image on that page. And of course, that's in the explanation as well. But if you scroll past here, you'll see things like promotional illustrations and neon design below that, and watch designs below that. And, there's just a ton of different work in here. And again, all of it with a heavy emphasis on process, showing you how each piece comes to fruition. And it goes way back. Like, that's a piece that's 20 years old right there. That was an interactive game that I made in graduate school.
Oh, wow.
Um, so there was a comic creator character who looked like me, wearing socks and sandals. He would run around town with his comic book in hand, and he would encounter various folks who would say mildly disparaging things about comics. And you had to choose, would you choose to educate them, or would you choose to passively agree with them because you didn't want to get into the conversation, and so you'd be rewarded or penalized based on your selection. And anyway, that was a an interactive game project I did in high school, and you can
That
see
is
the run
hilarious.
cycle there. And
It's awesome.
uh,
Oh, here we go. Here's your interview, right?
that's right. That's right. So that's Wayne Nyans. Those are just, a few of the many, many games he worked on. And this is a high resolution scan of the original artwork. So this is like, an IDW artist edition type of scan of my work. But it's not simply printed like this in the book. If you scroll down a little bit, this is a page that has those die cut holes cut into it. And if you scroll down just a little bit further, you'll see an animation that shows you the original artwork is on one page, the final colored piece is behind it, and those holes, those die cut holes, reveal the piece through the original artwork. So you can choose to look at this page as a before, the original art, or the after, the final colored piece, or a before and after at the same time as you look through these die cut holes and see, oh, okay, I see where the original art lined up with the colored piece. I see what was left behind, what got taken away. Yeah, so anyway,
That's
like
so
I said, a lot of this specialty formatting is done to really push this theme of process throughout the book.
beautiful. That is so cool. I
Thank
don't know
you.
if I've ever seen something like that before in a book.
Yeah. And then these are just mentions of showcase pieces, like there'll be double page spreads of the neon designs or my original artwork below it or what have you. Uh,
Ooh,
so it's not, uh, those break up the book a little bit, so it's not such a pattern throughout.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is this picture happen to be at that pinball place in Michigan you were talking about?
Uh, no, that picture happens to be in my basement.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. What a cool basement. That is
Yeah,
so cool.
thank you. Yeah, I've got a couple games. Like
A couple,
I
yeah.
said, I said I think I mentioned I like pinball.
Yeah, just a little bit, Ryan. That is awesome. It must be a loud room if you
Yeah.
got more than one player down there.
We a few years back, I was able to remodel part of our basement, and when we did it, I made sure to put in very good insulation so that if you're upstairs, you really can't hear what's going on because I wanted to be able to play whenever I wanted to, even in the evening time if
Yeah.
young people were sleeping.
That will keep your marriage strong too, I think.
Right? You're a
Jeez.
smart man.
You're a smart man. Well, that's beautiful. And then it gets into the rewards if you were participating in the Kickstarter, which is over. So you want to come right up here and just hit this order now and get this in your hands. Because it'll ship pretty much right away, right? When people order
That's
it.
right.
Yeah, it's
That's
ready
right.
to go.
It's here. It's ready. I'm ready to ship. Already shipped out the all the backer rewards. Everybody from the Kickstarter campaign who got them, who ordered them, got them. And now for the remainder of this year, I am doing a tour to promote the book and let people know about it because you may have gathered I'm pretty excited about it.
As you should be. I mean, to have the career that you've had, to share that career with students for as long as you have, and then kind of the diversity of what you've done from an artistic standpoint, right? So obviously there's the comics, but then some of the research that you've done for pinball. I would really like to understand more about the watch because if I'm not mistaken, you had a very successful design of a watch. I don't know if you one, how does someone go from comic books to a watch? I think that's a question in and of itself. But then after the neon thing, it doesn't surprise me, to be honest, right? But if you could kind of talk about how you got into watch design, and then if you could talk about the success of that design or one of your designs, that would be awesome.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, if you want to pull up a website, it's called MrJonesWatches.com. I'll spin you a little yarn about how this happened. So in 2020, we had this whole global shutdown thing, and I think all of us were trying to deal with it in our own way. And one of the ways that I dealt with it was to immerse myself in a new hobby. And I had a buddy who was getting into watches, and he's like, "Oh, you should check this out." I'm like, "Ah, I don't really wear watches. I'm not that into it." He's like, "No, no, like there's a really interesting system of mechanics behind watches. Some of them are battery operated. That's my watch right there that you see.
Oh, wow.
And some of them are automatic, which means they are only mechanical. There's no battery operation in them whatsoever, which
Yeah.
is really interesting from a mechanical standpoint. It's sort of like the solid state and electromechanical pinball machines where you've got like in watches, you have battery operated and fully mechanical. So anyway, that part is interesting. But then I started looking at a lot of different watches and seeing a lot of artistry. So if you click on that shop now, right now, Tommy, you'll see some more images of this watch I produced.
Yeah.
So long story short, I looked around a lot of different watches, was really getting interested, and I found this company called Mr. Jones Watches. They're located in London, England, and they make these artist designed watches. And I was just head over heels about what I saw here. And eventually I wrote to the company and I basically said, "Hi, introduced myself. I love what you do. If you're ever looking for another artist to collaborate with, I'd love to do a watch with you." And I sent them my website, gave them my portfolio. And to my surprise, a day later, I had an email in my inbox from the company owner, Crispin Jones, and he said, "Yep, we'd love to work with you." And we started a relationship. So we've made a few watches together at this point. The first watch was called Step Right Up. It's sort of a carnival theme. It was originally released as 100 limited edition watch, 100 pieces, and that sold out in company record time. It
Wow.
sold out in 2 hours worldwide. And after that, they said, "Okay, what do you want to do next?" And I said, "Well, I really love pinball. I'd like to do a pinball watch." And so we came up with one that was similar to this. This is actually a larger version that contains an additional robot and some more illustrations in the background because we had more room to work with.
Yeah.
So that was Ricochet. And then that did very well too. That came out in a 100 limited edition run that sold out in 30 minutes. It beat Step Right Up's record. And so because that's been so popular, we released it as an extra large version, and that's the one that you're looking at right here.
Wow.
So that's kind of the origin story of how I got into watchmaking or watch designing, I should say.
That is very unique, to say the least, right? I mean, just from a quick email that quickly, let's work together, and then you have two of their fastest selling watches, probably. That is awesome. This watch is so cool, though. That
Thank
is
you. Thank
amazing.
you. I I
Cool.
give I give a lot of credit to the Mr. Jones watch team because that is not an easy watch to manufacture.
Mm.
Every single one of those colors is individually printed and
Really?
aligned. Also, those robots are individually gilded. This was the first, and I believe it's still the only triple gilded watch in their collection. They had done gilding before, but it's kind of a labor-intensive process. And so essentially, they need to go in, etch the glass, gild that gold robot, wipe it all off, get it ready for the next one, do the silver, get it ready for the next one, do the it's rose gold. It looks copper, but it's rose gold. And that's not even counting the umpteen colors that you've got on the face of the watch, and then also the hours disc, and then also the minutes disc, and then also the back dial. Like it's a
Wow.
ton of work to make this thing. So they've told me in the past that this is their most labor intensive watch that they make. So
It's
when
hard
I
to see a
say
theme here, Ryan, when you partners the book, the watch.
totally, totally, I have to have very understanding people in my life.
I love it. You
I'm a
know what
lot
you
to
want.
deal with.
Oh, you know what you want, and obviously your idea worked if they're selling it out that fast, right? So impressive, but man, the detail on that is incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so proud of our collaboration together. I just, this is the last chapter in this book, One Bite at a Time, that we've been mentioning, is
Yes.
called The Era of Collaboration or The Dawn of Collaboration. I think it's The Dawn of Collaboration. That was the mistake they found.
Oh,
So, the most recent work that I've been doing is very collaborative. Like these neon designs, I could not do that on my own. I do not bend neon glass. I don't know how to do all that, but working with a local fabricator, we've become very close and we have a whole portfolio of work we've done together now. Those watches, I cannot make watches. I understand how they move and I can design and illustrate them, but I'm not a manufacturer. So all this to say, a lot of my most recent work, Coin Op Carnival, that book would not be what it is without the collaboration of my co-writer and best bud, Nick Baldridge. He is just an absolute genius when it comes to technology. I'm not a genius when it comes to technology, but I can draw a picture. And so when there's elements of like, these are text segments that are fully illustrated, uh, one of the most gratifying comments I had of the release of that book was when this old time operator came up to me and he said, this is the document that I wish I had when I first started working on pinball machines. That diagrammatic explosion that we did of the relay. He's like, everything was accurate, everything was in place, everything was in color, everything was so clear. Thank you for making this. And that was like, oh my God, I can't believe this reaction. You know, that's what we were hoping for. We were striving for that authenticity so that somebody could actually pick up this book and potentially use it to look inside a pinball machine for the first time and understand what was going on in there. So, anyway, all that to say, so much of my most recent work is what it is because of collaboration.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's an amazing experience when you find a really good partner and you get aligned and you're able to create something together. Um, Not that doing something on your own isn't gratifying, but I do think there's a little bit more gratification because it takes a lot to work with someone, right? You really have to give up a lot in order to work with someone. And when you're able to give up a lot and still create something that you wouldn't be able to do on your own, there's such an appreciation, I think, from that partner that helped you and you helped them get to that point. So, yeah, I feel like everything that's going on in the world, collaboration, I think is the key word. If we could learn to work
Right?
better together, I think everything would be a lot better. But it's hard. You got to work at it. And I feel like lately a lot of people aren't willing to put in that work to be collaborative. So it's always awesome when you see something come to life that you collaborated on.
Big time. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
I was talking with so in my role as professor of comics at Michigan State University, one of the things I do is to put on this event called the Michigan State University Comics Forum. And that happens now triennially. It was an annual event for many years, but all this to say, we've been doing this for 15 years at this point, and every year we invite a different heavy hitting cartoonist. Consequently, because of that and the amount of time I've been doing comics, I've been able to meet a lot of my heroes in comics. And I was speaking with one of them, and you know, we were having a conversation about our different work. He's like, "Oh, you do this neon stuff. How is it working with that fabricator?" And I told him, it's amazing. Like his name is Josh Goodacre, and he's been bending neon for over 35 years at this point. He's just an absolute master of the craft. We work so well together. I'm learning so much about neon. He's not so interested in design, but I sure am. So we make a really good team. And when things hit the fan, if anything is ever slightly wrong, like I'm remembering this one job in particular where we I designed the sign. It looked a particular way. He got a particular color of neon, and it was a little not what we were hoping for. Anybody else would have said, I just spent hours over a hot flame bending this glass, and now it's in place. It's not like you can just erase that and do it again. Like it's a big labor intensive process to redo something like that. And he lit it up and he saw it and he's like, nope, we got to make it right. and rebent the whole thing. And that's just one instance of making the job right. So all this to say, I told this cartoonist he's amazing, like in every way, and I just can't even believe I'm working with him. And he's like, good. Cherish that relationship because it's not often that you find collaborations that are that symbiotic. And so I really do appreciate these collaborative relationships that I've been able to form because it's true. It's just like any relationship. You don't necessarily, you know, marry anyone you find, right? It's like you find that right person
Right.
and you really work at it and make it work. But you can't do that with everybody. We're not designed to fit together with everybody in this world. But when you find those people, man, it can be really special.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Could not agree
Yeah.
more. Well, Ryan, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I'm so happy for you with the culmination of this amazing career to be able to have something that people can have in their hands and really kind of walk through everything that you've walked through over the last 20 years. I think that's absolutely amazing. Super happy for you about the course at MSU. It sounds like it's going amazing. We'll make sure we put all the links below to make it as simple as possible for people to get their hands on that book. And we'll make it easy for everybody. Real quick, yeah, one bite at a time. That's so amazing. Such a beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and if people are interested, you can go to onebiteatatimebook.com. That's onebiteatatimebook.com. I'm on tour for it right now, so maybe I'll see you in a town nearby. If I don't, you can go to that website, onebiteatatimebook.com, and order there as well. But Tommy, I can't thank you enough for spending your time with me. I know you do a ton of these interviews, and you said before we started recording, you've recorded a couple before me today already, and I can't believe your enthusiasm even after that big day of interviews. So thank you for having me on here and doing this again all over with me. I really super appreciate your time and giving all these creators time to talk about their work too. That's very selfless of you to do. So thank you for making that happen for all of us.
Absolutely, Ryan. I thoroughly enjoy doing this, and it's a lot of fun to meet great folks like yourself. And I hope this is not the last time. So I'm hoping, maybe at the end of your tour, we could have another conversation about how it went and some of the
Cool.
things that you learned from some of the fans as they got this in their hands and read it for the first time. I think it's always amazing when you get the reaction of people after they have your title in their hands, and you get to see that joy that you brought them from that career that you've had. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd be happy to chat with you again, Tommy.
Awesome, Ryan. Well, I wish you the very best week. And until next time, Ryan, thank you again. Appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Tommy. Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye bye.